All right, welcome into another edition of Off the Bench, and I hate to say this, but it feels like we were very poetic and almost a prophet yesterday on this show, and not in the manner in which I would have hoped it to be. Cincinnati Reds, they obviously are the talking point in this town at the very moment, with the Cincinnati Bengals obviously with a chance to maybe retake some of the steam later this week if the Reds are incapable of capitalizing on the opportunity that is presented to them. But let's face it, last night was an opportunity, and it was a failure. The truth of the matter is that this team has continued to showcase why they are still fighting for that third wild card spot. You'd like to think to yourself that at times this year that they have showcased 100% the ability not only to make the postseason, but the ability to move forward and progress and advance in the postseason. And last night felt like the whole 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, or perhaps you like the old 2 steps forward, 2 steps back. However you want to look at it, the truth is that they blew an opportunity. Now, we have a lot to get to. We have, of course, the situation with the crowd that I had discussed yesterday on this show, what that looked like, what it ultimately became, how we feel about it moving forward, and whether or not it's deserved. We also have the letdown. Obviously, at this point, we all know that yesterday's opportunity has come and gone, but we got to figure out what that lineup card is going to look like, whether we got to move on, and more importantly, the Mets and the Diamondbacks, what are they going to do as we move forward as well? First and foremost, let's get to it. The crowd, I made a big point on this show yesterday about whether or not the crowd was going to be impactful, whether they had a chance to go down there and showcase that this truly is maybe a baseball town, whether you like that term or not. The truth is they showed out. I know people took pictures at 6:40, 6:45, 6:50. I get it. The crowd was sparse, maybe up until 7 o'clock. But the truth is, like I said before, it's a blue-collar town. There's a lot of folks that don't have the ability to get there by the time in which the game starts. And if they did get there, it looked as if the Reds did not have, and I'm not blaming the Reds to be clear, maybe they don't have the staff ability to fill up on a weekday, all gates being open. But the line to get in clearly was a little bit longer than it traditionally would have been on a weekday game. But nonetheless, by the time the 4th, 5th inning rolled in, it was a pretty filled out crowd. Was it a sellout? No. Am I going to sit here and hang a banner and say, look how great we are? No, I'm not. But I will openly admit, I think that we showed that we were in it. We were committed. Now, some are going to say, well, why go down there anymore? What's the point? The reality is that, they always let us down every single time they give us a chance to maybe get our hopes up. And I understand that sentiment, but the truth is that this is a 3-game set. It's a 3-game set. And before the series started, I think we could all admit that we were not expecting to sweep the Pirates, especially when you add in the idea that we just came off a 4-game sweep of the Chicago Cubs. No one in their right mind expects to win 7 games in a row in Major League Baseball. Just as if the Cincinnati Bengals, if they were 4-5-0, would you expect them to be 10-0 by the time you get to 10 games? Maybe some fans, certainly. Of course, you're always going to have the swaying ends of the spectrum of the ultimate optimist and the ultimate pessimist. And despite popular belief, I'm sure that many probably think I fall towards the pessimistic side. I do my best to stay in the middle. It's going to be my goal on this show, is to stay somewhat in the middle and provide some insight on what I think needs to happen moving forward. But let's get right into the idea that the crowd was fine. It was serviceable. But yet again, we get let down. The truth is this team has done this, not just this year, but in years past. I hearken back to a time where it was right around the All-Star break, and your Cincinnati Reds in 2023 were leading the division. You had the Milwaukee Brewers come into town for what many were saying one of the best, basically, regular season series that Great American Ballpark's ever seen. And what happens? Milwaukee Brewers come into town, and they sweep the Cincinnati Reds. Fast forward to 2025, and here we stand again, yet another opportunity where some are saying that this is the biggest series in Great American Ballpark history. I'm not here to debate whether it is or isn't the greatest or the biggest series in Great American Ballpark history, but what I will say is that it's a 3-game set, and I'd like to give the Reds a chance to win the series before we just cast judgment and assume that it's all going to go for naught. I get the idea of the letdowns, building up, piling up, and feeling like it's never going to end. And certainly, I have been there as a fan of other teams in this same exact scenario. And maybe some will convince themselves that it'll never happen for the Cincinnati Reds, but I truly do believe, for whatever reason, that there is a chance to bounce back. So the letdown, certainly. I get the sentiment. I get the feeling. I understand the frustration, and I had that very much last night as well. But I guess you got to ask yourself, why does this continue to happen? And I guess there's probably not a perfect answer to that, but the answer that I keep coming back to is that we find ourselves relying on a lot of players that have not found themselves into a lot of big-time moments or big-time situations. That is the nut that has to get cracked for this franchise at some point, is that when the moment gets presented and when the opportunity arises, somebody has to break through the door. You don't sneak through the back door here. We'll get to that in a little bit, but there's no chance in the world, in my opinion, that we're just going to accidentally make the postseason because other teams completely fall apart. They've already fallen apart. They've already fallen apart. Once you go bankrupt and you have no money, if you're the New York Mets at some point, what I'm getting at is that really there's nowhere farther down to go, quite frankly. The Mets are going to bounce back. The question ultimately is what will the Reds do that's in front of them? You have an opportunity tonight that we'll get into at great length about, Paul Skenes and, of course, Hunter Greene. The highly debated topic that is going to be, as I said before a couple days ago, and I'll say it again, there is no doubt in my mind, I can see it coming a mile away, that this will be by far the most talked about point all offseason about whether they make the postseason or don't make the postseason. And frankly, if they make the postseason, it won't really be discussed. If they were to miss the postseason, we are going to make this out to be bigger than what I believe it will be. The Hunter Greene starting yesterday versus today is a valid discussion. It's a worthwhile topic. It's something that we obviously have debated not only on this show, but in Chatterbox Reds, time and time again. What do you do? For the life of me, every time I want to go down this rabbit hole that is, hey, let's get into the weeds of this. Let's talk about whether or not Hunter Greene should have started yesterday, and if he would have started, would the outcome have been different? I know everyone's going to say Hunter Greene could have shut out the Pirates. No doubt. I 100% understand. And in fact, I think Nick Kirby yesterday on the show said that 50% of Hunter Greene starts, he gives up 2 runs or less. Of course, that's great. But again, we're talking about a 50-50 opportunity. You got once more. At some point, we have to ask ourselves, why do we keep finding ourselves in the same position we always do? And the truth is that we have time and time again with this franchise tried to win with a mediocre or below average or piss poor offense. That's what we've been trying to do. As Bengals fans, I know that you guys feel this way, and I know that I feel this way as well as just an NFL fan. We look over at Pittsburgh every single year, the Steelers, and we've asked ourselves this question since Big Ben's left. How many times? What do we say? We say, oh, that's a cute team. I've never seen a 9-1 team or a 10-2 team look so unserious. We know that when the going gets tough, that team's not going to be able to rally around and be able to make plays and do well enough to win any meaningful games. We've seen that for the Steelers for how long? I know it. You know it. As soon as they get in the postseason, what happens? They bow out. It's great that they finish right around 500. I heard every single year about how Mike Tomlin's so great, and he just always finds a way to coach them up and get them around a 500 or better record, right? How long was that? Mike Tomlin's never had a losing record in the NFL. Look how great he is. I get it. I understand it. But it very much feels like our franchise for the Cincinnati Reds feels very similar to that. And by what I mean is post-Big Ben, to be clear. We're not a bad team, but we're certainly not a great team. And when we ask ourselves, why is that? And the truth is that we don't have the firepower. And we know we don't have the firepower. So when we get into these spots and we have these letdowns, I just continue to go back to the idea of why do we want to always try to blame or put pressure or say that the one thing that actually does give us a chance to win, it's always got to come through. I'm not a Steelers fan, but I would love for someone to shine some light on how that fan base has behaved over the last 6-7 years when they're losing games 17-13. Are they blaming the defense, saying that they should have given up a touchdown or 10 points and they would have been able to win? Or are they just admitting to themselves that, you know what, we just cannot do this consistently from an offensive perspective and expect to win? Gavin Lux was hitting in the 3-hole yesterday. Am I saying that Gavin Lux hitting in the 3-hole is the only reason that they weren't capable of scoring yesterday? No. But you got to ask yourself, take the blinders off and be honest and say, is that a serious team that's trying to make the postseason? Is that a team that you would think to yourself from the outside looking in that Gavin Lux being your 3-hole hitter is a worthwhile team to be worried about? You know the answer, and so do I. So yeah, I get a little upset and I get a little frustrated when we go down this warpath of making this big deal about whether or not Hunter Greene should have started and Brady Singer could come in today, and next thing you know, you got Hunter Greene available for 162. Just score some runs. That's what's missing here. And maybe we can structure the lineup in a manner that might allow us to score some runs. When you put guys in the lineup like Jose Trevino, who I have defended very much this year, but I'm not going to defend it after the heels of Tyler Stevenson getting one of the bigger hits of his entire career, and then all of a sudden, he's absent. Ke'Bryan Hayes, of course, a great addition as soon as he came over. I love Ke'Bryan Hayes, to be quite honest with you, but the truth is he's 0 for his last forever. Sal Stewart, once again, doesn't play. And I said it on this show yesterday, and I'll say it again. For whatever reason, Tito, if he has a chink in the armor, it is essentially he's falling in love with guys that he thinks or feels like it's a security blanket, and they're nowhere near the types of players those guys need to be able to be given this many opportunities. Matt McLain is hitting in the 6-hole. And I know what's going to happen to some people. They're going to say, well, look at his splits over his last 12 days at night against a right-handed pitcher when the temperature's 78 degrees. He's slugging 400, and he's hitting 5 home runs in that time. I don't care. He has not been a good enough hitter all year long to be hitting for a serious baseball team in the 6-hole, ever. So let me get this straight. Yesterday, we decided to play Trevino and Hayes, coupled with the fact that Gavin Lux was going to hit 3rd and McLain's going to hit 6th. And we ask ourselves, why did everything go wrong? Now, Ellie moved down in the lineup. Certainly there's going to be some folks that are going to ask him to move up. I'm at the point where I'm going to say, you know what, I'm okay with just leaving him where he is, because if that's what's working right now, so be it. I get the idea of wanting to move him up because of the frustration with the top of the lineup. Noel V. Marte hasn't looked the same in quite a bit. If you want to get to the nuts and bolts of this, we can do that right now. The truth is we walked into this season with no real quality veteran hitters. Nobody that you can hang your hat on. You want to go through it? Let's just start behind the plate. We'll go all the way around the diamond. Tyler Stevenson, he's been in and out as much as an ice cream machine at McDonald's. Okay? If you're going to rely on that type of guy, my bet is that you're going to be at least disappointed at some point. And I'm not trying to be overly crude against Tyler Stevenson, but let's face it. He's not been a consistent player from a health perspective and quality catching and hitting, at least in the last few years. First base, we decided to play Spencer Steer there, a guy that we have a whopping 2 years of history with. Matt McLain just came off of injury. He had a whopping, year, 75% of a year's worth of Major League time before we're just saying pencil him in, he's one of our core players. I get it. I was on the bandwagon too. I was hopeful, but I think looking back in hindsight, we can all say to ourselves, well, that probably wasn't, maybe that was a little early, jumping the gun a bit there. You have Elly De La Cruz, 2 years. Walking into this year, we had Jeimer Candelario. Remember him? We're paying him millions of dollars to bag groceries up in Scranton. At the trade deadline, we get Ke'Bryan Hayes. He comes over. Well, he couldn't hit water if he fell out of a boat in Pittsburgh, but he's going to solve all of our offensive problems, I guess. And he comes over, and then all of a sudden we're shocked that he's not playing well offensively. The truth is that's kind of who he is, and that's okay because he's unbelievably good defensively, and I can live with that. If Ke'Bryan Hayes is going to hit in the 9-hole for my baseball team and play an unbelievable third base, I can live with that. It's like a good blocking tight end. Yeah, he might not catch a bunch of passes, might not be the sexiest player, but you know what? I know on 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1, I can line up and run right behind him and get the first down. Sure, I have no problem having those types of guys on my team. But he didn't solve any of the real problems on this baseball team. Move into left field, I guess Gavin Lux, a guy that never played the outfield, was going to solve that problem. Austin Hayes, sure. And Austin Hayes, absolutely. He has outplayed his contract, but there's a reason he signed for $5 million. TJ Friedl, he's been a grinder. I'll give him all the credit in the world. He's been a serviceable player. He's a good player this year. I didn't believe that he was even going to have the season that he had, so thank the Lord that he did. But I'd also say moving forward, that's still a little bit of a question mark for me. Right field, it has been whatever. I mean, I don't know. Noelvi Marte, I guess, he started the season, and we never expected him to even see the big league club half the time. He comes up, he gets an opportunity at third base, and then all of a sudden now he's our penciled-in right fielder, everyday player, which, again, I said before, I'll say it again. That's great and fantastic, but we have what do we have to lean back on and say, you know what, I know I'm getting this out of this guy. I know I'm getting this. I just went through the whole entire diamond, and is there one player that you say to yourself, I know I'm getting that out of him? Joey Votto's a guy that maybe at this point, I hope people are starting to look back and realize how unbelievably awesome it is to have a baseball player like that. And I get he's a Hall of Famer, and maybe it's not fair to compare people to Hall of Fame players, but I would even go so far to say that there's other types of players that you can lean on and say that quite frankly, those are types of guys that you can make the postseason with. Jeimer Candelario, unfortunately, we completely whiffed, and that, I think, has reared its ugly head, unfortunately. When you spend that much money on a player and he provides you little to nothing, and by little to nothing, I mean he's actually providing worse than nothing. You pay him and he provides nothing. But that's who we are, and that's why we find ourselves in the spot that we are. There's no surprises here. There's no mistakes. Now, having said that, that was the letdown part, and that's why the letdown has continued to happen. There's a real reason this stuff happens. And it's because we just aren't there yet. And I know a lot of people are going to say, well, I'm tired of waiting. Me too. Join the club. I'm not here to justify it. I'm not here to say that this is why it should be or be patient. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just laying out what I think are the facts and the reason as to why we find ourselves in these spots and why we get let down time and time again. Because a lot of these guys, a significant amount of them, half their battle in Major League Baseball has been just trying to be on a Major League Baseball team. Has been just to be on a club, let alone playing in meaningful games, let alone getting past the idea of not just being here, but playing up to another level that gets you to a spot where you can be proud about, which is either being in the postseason or, heaven forbid, advancing in the postseason. But all that said, you wake up today and you can just forget about it because the opportunity still presents itself. It's a big-time opportunity. It's one in which you don't really get all that often. Hunter Greene just the other day said that he enjoys or loves the idea of being an ace. I think he had made mention that maybe the only thing that he wishes that would have happened differently when he threw the complete game shutout just the other day was that there would be, quote, more fans here, end quote. Well, guess what? He's going to get that tonight. He's also got a formidable opponent, as we all know, in Paul Skenes across the bump, and I already know what his record is, 4-0 against the Reds with about 9,000 strikeouts. I'm well aware of what we're up against. But I guess where I'm at is that it's all perspective, isn't it? I just view it as, well, these are postseason games. This is a postseason series. If you can't win the series against the Pittsburgh Pirates, do you deserve to be in the playoffs? Do you feel like that's something you could, again, I'll take it however I can get it. Trust me. If they go 1-5 over the next 6 and somehow everybody else loses out, sure, I'll take it. But I'm also going to say I'm not going to feel sorry for us, I guess, as a franchise if we're incapable of beating the Pirates and we don't get it. I don't even care if we sweep Milwaukee. I get it. We go 4-2. Would it be a little painful if we don't get in? Sure. But the idea that you can't beat the Pittsburgh Pirates when it means the most has continued to haunt this franchise. Stone, you have the biggest pitching matchup probably for certain all season long. I don't want to go down the ramifications of since this time because I'm sure I will overlook a pitching matchup. But there's nobody that's going to look at this matchup and think to themselves it's not the highest prolific matchup that we've had all season long between Hunter Greene and Paul Skenes. I guess, what is your takeaway from the idea now, hindsight, of whether or not Hunter Greene could have started yesterday? Obviously, you pitched Singer today. Do you wish you could do it differently now that you know the result, or are you just kind of like, hey, you know what, I'm good with sticking with what we have now?
I'll tell you this, I definitely don't feel as good as I felt yesterday. I sat here on this show yesterday and I said, yeah, I'm fine with this decision from Tito to kind of not mess with the rotation, leave Hunter where he's at, have him so he's not available for 162. Do I feel as good about that here today? No, absolutely not. Am I surprised by what transpired last night? No, right? The Reds, as you have mentioned, have had struggles against the Pittsburgh Pirates for whatever reason, and that reared its ugly head once again last night. But it's all you can ask for here in this game. I think after last night, we're all ticked off, depressed maybe, frustrated with what had transpired on the baseball field last night, and then you flip the channel over to TBS, and then you see the Cubs blow the lead, and then the Mets take the lead. Next thing you know, you're out of the playoffs again. But like you mentioned at the top of the show, I don't think it was necessarily realistic to come in here and expect to sweep the Pittsburgh Pirates in this series. Did you want to drop the first game with a guy in Brady Singer who had been pitching tremendously over the past month plus? No, obviously not, but I think it's a little bit too early to hit the panic button. Do you feel as good about this game going against Paul Skenes? Absolutely not. As far as I'm concerned, Paul Skenes is the best pitcher in baseball. You got to deal with him tonight. Now, we'll see how long he goes. As we mentioned yesterday, they've protected him a little bit. Pittsburgh has. As the past few starts, they're obviously out of it, have nothing to play for. But I'm very interested. Maybe there's been a report coming out of Pittsburgh, but are they going to let him ride in this game? Or is this a situation where he's got a pitch count and he's only going to throw a few innings? Because if they're going to let him ride in this game, there is little to no margin for error for Hunter Greene. If he goes out there and does what Brady Singer did last night, gives up 4 runs in 1 inning, you can just chalk it up as an L. Because Paul Skenes, hate to be Mr. Negative here, but I don't even see how they're going to score a singular run off Paul Skenes in this ballgame.
Well, you have a chance, of course, as always, to hit the ball over the fence on accident. I think that is pretty much the idea of what most Major League franchises have decided to do, but yet we have not done that. And we have continued every single time we ask ourselves why we've gotten some outbursts from an offensive perspective. It's because we've had some guys that have ran into baseball. Last night, it's a perfect example. I mean, Ellie De La Cruz had a great night. Had an absolutely fantastic night. One of the few guys that showed up for the baseball team. But the only way they scored is he hit one over the fence. Otherwise, it's a shutout. 0 runs, yet again. I think, I have to do, I guess, check back in on it. But not too long ago, I was looking to see, which franchise had scored 2 runs or less in the live ball era more than the Cincinnati Reds are on pace to do. And they were the leader in the clubhouse. Yet we find ourselves tonight with a chance to capture the 3rd wild card spot. And I know that feels crazy. I know that feels like maybe at times that just seems not even a possibility of the Reds being able to finally do it, whatever term you want to use. I know that they have let us down time and time again, but they have a huge opportunity. Maybe I'm crazy for thinking this, but the more and more I hear people telling me that Paul Skenes is unhittable and there's no chance in the world that they're going to be able to get something done against Paul Skenes, the more and more it makes me think that he's 10-10, I think, for a reason. And what is that reason? Well, because the Pirates aren't a very good team. And I'm tired of acting like tonight is just a wash because there's no chance in the world that we can get to Paul Skenes. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's gonna put it. I guess for lack of a better term, he'll show me up, and I'll have to walk in here tomorrow and say, well, I was wrong. There was no chance in the world. They could have played 27 innings against Paul Skenes, and they still wouldn't have scored. But I just think from the Reds' standpoint, moving into this game tonight, Stone, you bring up an excellent point, which is, what is his pitch count, and does that change the mentality of the Reds hitters? Now, certainly you go into a game, you might have a game plan of trying to get to guys early, right? When the guys are like as talented and as good as Paul Skenes are, more times than not, you'll hear hitters saying they're going to be ultra aggressive, right? They're going to try to give them the most swings that they possibly can, because if you sit there and you wait and you wait and you wait and you find yourself down 2 strikes and you haven't taken the bat off your shoulders, well, you don't give yourself a huge opportunity there to put the ball in play and or have something good happen for you if you're facing guys like Paul Skenes. You need as many opportunities to swing as you possibly can, and that's why you'll see some teams be ultra aggressive against good starting pitching. The question, though, is that the wise choice if you have a guy that is being protected, that they have nothing to play for, and you certainly would like to think that he's on some kind of pitch count. I don't know if there's a hard number there, Stone, but it certainly feels like if you get into the 4th or 5th inning and the pitch count's around 70, 75, 80, 85 pitches, they might just decide after that inning finishes, we're going to call it good. I don't think you're going to see a guy go out there anything north of 90 pitches. The question is, though, is how quickly can you get him to that pitch count? And that goes back to the idea of whether or not they're going to be aggressive or if they're going to be patient. This team, in a way, I don't know if they're even capable, to be honest with you, of having an approach that they're capable of sticking to collectively as a unit. I know that sounds insane, but I don't know if they have enough good hitters in my mind to be able to go into a game plan and say, hey, we're not taking till we get to a strike, but we certainly want to try to make sure that we extend his pitch count. I don't think that we have enough. We'll strike out 20 times. We have a hard enough time putting the ball in play when we're up there just hitting normally and trying to swing at the best pitch we get out in an entire at bat. Now you add in the fact that you add a strike in, or dare I say for some guys 2 strikes, maybe even what I would say 3 might be a better idea. Shout out Kelly for the Cubs, by the way, last night. I don't know if anybody was watching that game, but that guy's the biggest idiot you'd ever seen in your life. Not to get on a side tangent, but Kelly, I don't know his first name because I don't watch the Cubs. And
Carson?
Probably Carson?
Yeah, I think so.
Carson Kelly. Carson Kelly is an idiot. You ever seen a guy walk up to bat down 2 runs against Diaz? Diaz, I don't care who it is. It's Edwin or Alexis. They both pretty much have the same traits. He's all over the place. Ball 1, ball 2, ball 3. And guess what? He throws a borderline strike. 3-1. What's my man Kelly do? Diaz rides one up and in on him, and he check swings a little bit like he's going to try to hit the ball, and it hits the knob of his bat. Ball 4, by the way. Hits his bat, that's strike 2. What does he do? He then swings at a slider about 1.5 feet outside because he was looking to hit the 2-run home run with nobody on. Once again, a really wise choice out of Chicago. So I digress. My apologies for going off track, but I had to get that in there because, Kelly, you are a certified bum. Not just because you play for the Cubs, but because if you have a Diaz on the mound and you're the first leadoff hitter, probably pretty wise just to see if he'll walk you. You got a better chance of him just walking you, completely honest, than to even try to swing the bat at all. So I guess that goes back to tonight. Do they even swing the bat? Because one would argue there might be a better opportunity for some of these guys to get on base if they can just luckily get on there and maybe run the pitch count up 5-6 pitches, Stone, and then you move on to the next guy, and then hopefully by the 5th or 6th inning they get Skenes out of there and we move on to the bullpen. Maybe we can score some runs late. I don't know. Do you think that that's a strategy, legitimate strategy that they might employ tonight. Some semblance of patience that, might put them in the hole early, but it will pay dividends late.
I mean, I'm kind of with you. I'm not convinced that they all can have the same strategy and be on the same page. Like, maybe you see a couple of guys that can go up there and be patient, and then next thing you know, Ellie or somebody's up there hacking at the first pitch. So I think against Skenes, you just got to find a way to get on base any way that you can. Now, I don't think he's going to probably throw too many first pitch balls. I think he's going to come after this lineup because I think Paul Skenes understands it doesn't matter who he's facing. He trusts his stuff, and he's going to go with his fastball, and he's going to go with that slider, and he's going to let it rip. I don't think he's going to come right after Ellie, too. So, I think the approach tonight, if they're going to try to, jump on him, is to probably be ready for that first pitch fastball. I know it's coming at you. I know it's coming at you fast. I know you want to find a way to get him out of the game as quickly as you can. But if you get deep in the counts with Skenes, with this lineup, with the hitters that you have, I just think you're in serious trouble if you let it get to that point. I get the positives or the upsides of being patient, to have the opportunity to get him out of the ball game. But, if he throws you that first pitch fastball and you're just watching it and you get in deep counts where you're behind with the level of hitters that we have on this team, it's going to be a long night, I think.
Many are forecasting a long night period. The question is going to get the big hit. I don't know how many times that the Reds have found themselves last night with a chance to do some damage. They had a legitimate chance multiple times to find a way to get a big hit that would honestly, in my opinion, kind of break loose the pressure. And this team just fails to do that time and time again. How many times have we seen a guy get to third base with less than 2 outs this year and you're just incapable of getting him in? We had the bases loaded against the Mets. It seems like to me that, and again, I'm not here to suggest that I'm in the clubhouse and I know, but it definitely feels like there is a mentality shift that happens when this team finds themselves with a chance to do something special. Whether that's a game-by-game basis, whether that's perhaps just genuinely speaking the opportunities within a game, whether you have the bases loaded, second and third, less than 2 outs, perhaps you get a leadoff hitter on in the 9th inning down by 2. They just time and time again are incapable of getting the big swing that drives guys in, that again, takes the monkey off the back. Matt McLain last night, let's face it, just a bad night. A really bad night. I think he was, I don't want to, maybe don't put me into this, but I think he was 22% of their outs last night was Matt McLain. Just a tough deal. And secondarily to that, we've got to find ways to put guys in there that give us a chance to have some pop and some power that can run into a baseball. And I know everyone's going to tell me that Andujar can't hit right-handed pitching, et cetera, et cetera. But you know what I do know? I know that Andujar, if he accidentally runs into one of Paul Skenes' fastballs, that thing is going to go over the fence. Gavin Lux can run into a fastball, and I'm not too sure if it gets to the warning track. And that's being as respectful as I can. Last night, Gavin Lux hit one very well in the first inning. Like, he barreled a baseball up.
That's as far as he can hit it.
Well, we don't need to be that rude. But, yeah, listen, it's just not there. And that's not part of his game. And let's face it, when we played the Cubs, what was the mindset of Craig Counsell? And maybe I shouldn't talk about Craig Counsell as the thing that we should adopt because that team clearly isn't playing good baseball as late. But what did they say against Hunter Greene? What was the storyline of the Cubs offense? It was, we're going to have to hit home runs off this guy. Largely because we aren't going to probably get too many chances to get multiple hits in a row. That's obvious, it seems. And tonight, I would love for us to put a lineup together. I beg for us to put a lineup together that is very much power-centric. It just seems like that's the only way that we're capable of putting guys across the plate more times than not. Listen, this is the same team that has failed to score the guy at second base with nobody outs and extra innings over 50% of the time. It's not as if this team is an unbelievably good, gifted small ball team, can hit the ball backside, hit and run, steal bags. We don't even try to steal anymore. How many times does Will Benson have to be on first base before we ask him to try to steal second base against one of the guys that is incapable of throwing guys out? And I know someone's going to say, well, last night he threw out TJ Friedl. That's because TJ Friedl decided to go on a ball in the dirt. The ball bounced up perfectly out in front of the plate to the catcher. He picked it with his bare hand, and he threw the ball what was probably, 55, 60 feet it felt like. And again, I know it's more than that. But Truth is, that wasn't a traditional steal opportunity for having him try to throw somebody out. It's the same talking points, unfortunately, that we have each and every single time on a weekly basis with this baseball team. And unfortunately, it's not even all that interesting anymore. There's not even really like anything to debate that seems to be worthwhile that we haven't covered that doesn't already been resolved. So what do you do moving forward? Well, let's talk about the lineup. Tonight, you asked me yesterday, what's the lineup look like? How do we do it? What do you make it up of? You have obviously right-handed pitcher in Skenes, and you have to ask yourself, what do you want to do with the DH spot? Do you want to give it to Andujar? Do you want to give it to Sal Stewart? Let's jump to the conclusions right now. Sal Stewart's going to have to play third base tonight. He's going to have to. And I know someone's going to say, well, in a game that you think you're probably going to have to win 2-1 or 1-0, why do you want to put a guy out there that might be a liability in Ke'Bryan Hayes? Largely because Ke'Bryan Hayes has showcased right now that he's probably maybe not healthy. I'm trying to give him an out. I'm trying to say maybe the back is the problem here. But if he's not healthy, I'm tired of doing what the Reds have done this year, which is just run guys out there, and run guys out there that are incapable of producing when hurt. So you have Sal Stewart in the lineup over Ke'Bryan Hayes. That's one of the opportunities. I'm guessing that Trevino started last night not just because of Singer, but also because I guess maybe the fact that Terry Francona felt like he was going to have to probably catch Tyler Stevenson in his mind tonight and also tomorrow, and he didn't want Tyler Stevenson to have to catch maybe 6 straight days in a row. I would have assumed that Trevino was going to get an opportunity on the getaway day, if you want to call it that, on the businessman special tomorrow. I thought that was going to be Trevino's opportunity to get one more run in the sun here, but apparently not. So Stevenson's going to be back in the lineup. But outside of that, what other options are you really going to be dealt with that are going to make you make a move? Do you move Marte out of the 2-hole? Do you put Elly De La Cruz back up towards the top of the lineup? Is Andujar the DH? Or is Gavin Lux going to continue to be the DH just because of the right-handed pitcher in Paul Skenes? My guess is, as I said before, there's a reason Santiago Espinal played as much as he did, and it's because Tito trusts him, and guess what? That's Gavin Lux. So Gavin Lux will be in the lineup again. I will be shocked if he's not, and I'm going to go out and assume that he's going to be hitting probably somewhere at the top of the lineup. Stone, do you think that's crazy or not?
No, I don't think it's crazy. And look, Gavin Lux has been a solid player for this team. He was a solid pickup, championship experience, has been in the league for several years now, played for a big-time organization in the Dodgers. I don't have an issue with Gavin Lux being in the lineup. I do have an issue with him batting third, all right? You need some power there at that 3 spot. Now, the counter-argument to that is, well, Stone, there's no guy you can put there that has that power, and I understand that. But, it's tough because Gavin Lux has shown you that he is nowhere near the defender that Matt McClain is at second. And if you're already saying we got to put Sal Stewart at third, the last thing you want to do is put Lux at second and then Stewart at third, because those are 2 liabilities right there. And then you also have issues defensively in the outfield. So there isn't a perfect way you can do this, obviously. If there was, I think the Reds would already have clinched the playoff spot by now, but that's just not the reality of the situation. So I personally would like to see Andujar get a start, whether it's at that DH spot or elsewhere. I think Andujar, obviously came off the bench last night, had a clutch hit when he came in, kind of grinded that at bat. Did he bounce into a double play, a second AB? Yes. But I just think he gives you that opportunity to potentially put the ball over the fence. And against Skenes, you talked about the Cubs' approach against Hunter Greene. It's like, well, we got to put the ball over the fence because we're probably not going to string together a ton of hits. I understand the last time the Reds faced Skenes, they were able to get some hits, just weren't able to get the massive hit, the big hit that brought in runs. I think, hitting one over the fence, obviously, I think needs to be kind of the mindset here tonight. And I think you need a lineup that kind of reflects that with some power at some big spots at the top of the order. And I think Andujar can provide that. So I would like to see him get the start tonight.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen largely because of this right-handed, left-handed situation.
Yeah.
I think that Lux has showcased that he's a good hitter against right-handed pitching, and Andujar is one of the best left-handed hitting hitters or left-handed pitching hitters, in Major League Baseball. The truth is that I just don't know if this team consistently is capable of doing what they might do tonight. But I have this weird suspicion, I got to tell you, that they are going to get it done tonight. I got to tell you, I don't know how, and I'll be honest, I don't know why I feel this way. But something tells me that they're going to come out and they are going to find a way to get to Skenes. And when I say get to Skenes, I'm not saying they're going to score 10 runs or anything crazy like that. But I definitely think that they're going to they're going to score at least 4 runs tonight. They'll score at least 4 runs tonight. And whether or not that's good enough, time will tell. I think we've come out here and we acted like, and again, I'm not trying to be overly critical, but I think we've gotten ourselves into a position now where we expect way too much from our starting pitching. Way too much. I mean, if Hunter Greene comes out tonight and gives up 3 runs, the vast majority, I feel like, of this fan base is going to feel like that's a failure. And that just seems wildly over expectations to me. So, moving forward, we'll see what the Reds are capable of doing on a night like tonight when they face the best pitcher in the league. But as I've said before, and I'll say it again, if you cannot win the series against the Pittsburgh Pirates, do you really belong in the playoffs in the first place? Now, I'd like to get in there. Don't get me wrong. I'll take my chances. But, again, if Brady Singer is incapable of beating the Pirates, what makes us think that he's capable of beating the Dodgers? I'd like to think that that's probably not one that I'd like to find out. But Reds are in a tough spot because everything's right in front of them. And unfortunately, what I feel like has happened is you lose last night, and it kind of puts the bullseye right back on your back and saying, you know what? The pressure wasn't on you for a while. It wasn't. You guys were dead and gone. And then all of a sudden you found yourself, just like I've said before with NCAA tournament basketball. We've seen it hundreds of times in the tournament. We've also seen upsets, so I'm hoping that the Reds can do that. But we've seen how many times where a team that's a 12, 13, 14, even a 15 seed, they get themselves and they're playing good basketball and they're up by 4 or 5 points heading into that last media timeout, and then all of a sudden the vibe seems to change and shift. And you go from, instead of trying to play like there's nothing to lose, you play like there's everything to lose. And my concern for this team is that's the mindset that will shift for them, is that they were the ones that were just the go fun, lucky, happy Reds that were nowhere near a chance of making the postseason, to then all of a sudden, okay, wow, we're in it. We're here. We control our own destiny. The magic number belongs to us. Well, we gave the magic number over in just one night. Let's talk about the Mets and the Diamondbacks. My personal feeling and thought on all of this is simple. I really think that they're going to lose a couple games regardless. I'm not going to focus on them. I really care only about the Cincinnati Reds. If you're telling me right now that the Reds can find a way to win both series, right? You win 4 games, you lose 2, they're in the postseason. They are in the postseason. 3-3 is questionable. 3-3 is very much questionable. But 4-2, I feel very good about having a tie. So we can get into the nuts and bolts of what the schedules looks like and the pitching matchups and the Diamondbacks and all that. It's all still, as I've said before, I want to make this very clear. When you had this 6-game run, right, and you want to sit there and compare it to a game itself, we are quite literally, I think, in the first media timeout of a college basketball game. That's where we're at. I don't want to overreact too far on one side and say, oh my gosh, we lost a huge opportunity. The sky is falling. Look at what the Diamondbacks were able to do last night. Look at what the Mets were capable of doing last night. It's just one day. It's just one day. You find a way to win tonight, and the Cubs finally get the head out of their rear end and finally win a baseball game sometime in September, which they are capable of doing 90% of the time, it feels like. Heaven forbid in October. And then you have the Dodgers are going to be the Dodgers. I'll tell you right now, if the Diamondbacks want to sweep the Dodgers, they've earned it. They belong to be in. They can have it. Especially when they traded away. You know what the funny thing is they traded away their biggest asset at the trade deadline. They said, hey, who wants Eugenio Suarez? Anybody want him? All right, you can have him. We'll take your prospects. And in return, you know what we're going to do? We're going to run down this 3rd wild card spot. Meanwhile, we're out here trying to say that we're going for it, or we're gonna make a move to make a push, and you know, we didn't trade anybody. Yet we've gotten ran down by the Diamondbacks. But I'm not going to sit here and focus on them. I'm not. I don't think you should either, to be honest with you. Should you scoreboard watch? Of course. Should you hope that the Mets lose? Yes. Would you want the Diamondbacks to lose? Of course. But the main point is this, is tonight, if we find ourselves still one game back with a win, or we might find ourselves one game back with a loss. But the reality is that I just focus and I want to make sure that this baseball team continues to play winning baseball, because in my mind, that's what I'd like to see happen as you move through and you get to the postseason. I guess making the postseason is certainly something to be happy about around here. I have no doubts that I will be extremely excited and I will feel great. But as we head into this offseason, I guess maybe this is the last topic of the day here before we get to the Stone Shield show is, will you feel any different if the Reds were to make the postseason and then just get absolutely trounced by the Dodgers in 2 games than you would have if they missed the postseason by a game? Would it make you feel like they did something extra special? I personally, if they did what they did against the Braves, right, back in 2020 in the COVID year, I don't think I would. I think I would look very much at this team and this season the same way I would have as if they missed the postseason. So what I'm getting at is that I just want them to play good baseball moving forward. And by good baseball, they win 4 games. That's the standard. That's what should have happened, and that's what can still happen. Anything less than 4 games, and I got to tell you, I'm not totally sure that you deserve it. Stone, they get in 3-3. They get trounced by the Dodgers. Do you genuinely think that would make it a difference? I mean, I maybe I'm being too overly critical about making the postseason and not doing anything with it for a franchise that very rarely ever makes the postseason. But it just seems like we've gotten ourselves into the spot now where we've lost focus on what matters the most, which is at some point having a good baseball team that plays good baseball.
Yeah, I think for me, coming into the year, my whole thought process was season's a success if you get in, season's a failure if you don't. So I think if they got in, there would be some jubilation, some happiness, obviously, of getting in. And then if they get whipped right away, then it switches into, well, okay, that was all for nothing. But I think there is a lot to be said about getting into the postseason, especially all the adversity that they face, all the tough times that they faced, how many times they had been written off, and they continue to keep fighting with a young team, a young nucleus, and, of course, a new manager with Tito Francona here. But I think there would be a lot to say about making the postseason, and I think you would have some takeaways and say, okay, this is a successful season. We made the postseason. We were aggressive at the deadline. We added to our roster. It worked out. We got to the postseason. How do we take that next step? And then if you follow it up in 2026 by missing the playoffs, then it's kind of that whole thing that we've been stuck on this year where it's like a couple of steps forward and then an extra step back in the wrong direction. But I think there would be a lot to celebrate if they were able to get in. And then, obviously you hope you can pick up a win. Haven't won one of those postseason games since, 2012? That would be nice to kind of get that monkey off your back. But, with the Dodgers, I mean, shoot, when you played them in August, they absolutely whooped you. So, if that happens again, then obviously you're only happy for a few days, and then it comes back to the reality of, we just got our butts whipped in the postseason, and we're going home, and it wasn't really that big of a difference than if we hadn't made the postseason altogether. But I think it'll say a lot for this team if they can find a way to sneak in and at least give themselves an opportunity to be playing postseason baseball and just banking those reps, right? This team, this group of players, a lot of these guys are going to be playing together for several years going forward, and if they can get that experience playing in that type of environment, national TV games, everybody watching, and at least just get a feel for that, I think that could help them for years in the future.
I guess I could buy into that idea a little bit, just from the standpoint of getting reps. That seems important, but I feel like I've kind of done this time and time again with this franchise of saying, well, this is important. We said this back in 2023, if you remind yourself. Remember that? When we were saying, look at all these young guys. The last week of the season, they're playing in all these meaningful games, and they're getting reps when it matters the most. And I know they fell up just short, but the truth is that next time they get this opportunity, they're going to capitalize. Well, here we find ourselves now. It's time to capitalize. I think they're going to get it done tonight. I hope that you do too. The truth is that Paul Skenes is beatable. He's lost 10 times this year. Yes, I get he's one of the best pitchers in Major League Baseball, but he's certainly going to be on some type of pitch count. Okay? There's no way this guy's going to go out and throw a complete game shutout with 110 pitches. So are you capable of keeping the game close, and or are you capable of getting the big hit? Good baseball is simple. You catch the ball, you throw the ball, and you find ways to get big hits. Now, I know that sounds like super obvious to many, and that sounds like a soundbite you can take out of context. But the reality is you play clean in the field, you throw the ball over the plate, you don't walk guys, you don't hit guys, you don't give free bases, and you find a way, like Matt McClain did last night on multiple opportunities, at some point you get that big hit. That's what good baseball is. And that's all that's going to happen to get in the postseason. They don't have to be superheroes. They don't have to go out and score 8, 9, 10 runs a game. I'm not asking for that. What I'm asking for is they get a couple big 2-out hits. Somebody has to step up for this baseball team. I don't know who it is going to be, but I know this. Elly De La Cruz has taken a lot of beating in this town. A lot of beating. And the reality is that guy showed up last night. He absolutely showed up. The question is who else is going to do that? Spencer Steer has been rock solid this whole month. Elly De La Cruz has turned it around a little bit. Is Noelvi Marte going to be that guy? Can TJ Friedel find some big swings? Is it going to be a guy like Tyler Stevenson yet again? It's going to have to be somebody that's going to get the big hit tonight. We'll find out if they're capable of doing it. And the truth of the matter is that, yes, we also have Hunter Greene going. All this talk about Paul Skenes this and Paul Skenes that, I get it. He's very good. But we have Hunter Greene going. And tonight is an opportunity to showcase why Tito wanted to make the move that he did. All this talk about taking a chance to go 2-0, you have a chance to go 2-0, you want to take the chance on perhaps not just throwing Brady Singer game 1 to get the victory. Yeah, that's great, but then you have Hunter Greene going against Paul Skenes. What if I said to you this? Hunter Greene throws last night, gives up 3 runs, we lose. Brady Singer goes tonight, gives up 4 runs, we lose. Very possible. That scenario is very much possible. Just as the possibility of Brady Singer losing last night and Hunter Greene finding a way to win tonight, and you have a better record than you would have if you did it in reverse. That's the storyline that I'm trying to make up in my head so I don't drive myself crazy in thinking that they should have moved Hunter Greene up. Maybe I'm being overly optimistic about the move and the decision that Tito made of not moving Hunter Greene up, but it's the only thing left to deal with. We move on. That's where I'm at. We move on. Hunter Greene is one of the best pitchers in Major League Baseball. He's by far the best pitcher on this baseball team. We have him going tonight in what many of us think, is a must-win game. If you don't think that that's something to look forward to, if you don't think that that's an optimistic viewpoint, then I don't know what to tell you. I get that there was a letdown last night. I completely understand that. But the reality is they have a chance to right their wrong tonight. Nobody in their right mind thought that they were probably going to go 2-0 on the first 2 games of this series. I don't think many did. And they had tonight as a loss. Well, guess what? The best chance you can get in life sometimes is a second chance. And more times than not, if you take advantage of your second chance, good things happen to you for the rest of your life. And that's exactly what the Reds have. They've gotten a second chance. And their chances tonight against Paul Skenes. I get it. He's good. I understand it. But you know what? I'm personally really not all that worried about it. I'm not scared about it. I'm not going to go into this game thinking that there's no chance. There's a chance. There's a damn good chance. It's all not for naught, as they say. The Reds find a way to win tonight. They control their destiny yet again. And there we go. We got one more game on a getaway day against the Pirates with 3 games in Milwaukee. Maybe I'm wrong. I'll come back in here tomorrow and say, I'm sorry, I was wrong. But I'm going to tell you right now, you can clip it and do whatever you want with it. Watch. Hunter Greene is going to go in tonight. The Reds are going to beat Paul Skenes. They're going to go in tomorrow, controlling their own destiny on getaway day, and they're going to have 3 games left in Milwaukee with a chance to close it out. We'll see if they're capable of doing it, but I sure know this. The season's not even close to being dead, and I'm so sick and tired of hearing about how this is the same old Reds. You know what this Reds team has done all year that I know for a fact because I've watched it time and time again? As soon as you think that you're down and out, as soon as you think that you're dead, they bounce back, and they showcase why they're still fighting for a 3rd wild card spot. So, I'm not putting my neck out on the line too many times by saying it, But the Reds are going to win tonight. You can book it. Stone Shield Show is next. I hope everybody loves it, and I hope you enjoyed tonight's baseball game. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Take care, everybody.
All right, here we go. Welcome into the Stone Shield Show here on a Wednesday. Pleasure to have you with us here. Those of you who stuck around after Off the Bench, certainly appreciate you guys. Off the Bench yesterday and today, fully dedicated to the Cincinnati Reds, as it should be, right? Obviously it's football season. We're here in late September. Typically everybody kind of changes what they're doing, changes their mindset. The Reds are done. You're already worried about the next year for the Cincinnati Reds. We're on the Bengals. Lots of bad things going on with the Cincinnati Bengals, and the Reds still have an opportunity here to save us as we progress here through the end of September and into October. Reds had a big opportunity last night to really kind of assert their dominance here in these wild card standings, and obviously they failed to do so, and it was really just a devastating loss last night. Singer gives up the 4 runs, did a nice job of battling back after that. Oneil Cruz hits the 2-run bomb, and then, I was sitting there, watching with a buddy, and we're looking at the Pirates lineup before the game, and you can't help but think to yourself, like, yeah, there's several guys here at the bottom of this order that I've never heard of in my life, and you have a feeling they're going to find a way to drive in a few runs and come up in big moments for Pittsburgh in this series. A couple of guys did that last night for the Pirates. They ultimately get the win 4-2. We're going to break down that game, thoughts on that game. We'll look ahead to tonight. Obviously, massive game. Paul Skenes, in my opinion, clearly the best pitcher in Major League Baseball. Obviously, he has lots of losses on his record this year, I think in large part due to the fact that, his team and his offense certainly struggles, to say the least. They've had lots of issues this year. I think Skenes is the best in the game. And then you get an opportunity here with Hunter Greene, who is your ace. Obviously, you've had some injury history with Hunter Greene, but since he has come back, he has been lights out. He looks like that bona fide number 1 in a MLB rotation. And honestly, I think these are the 2 best pitchers in the National League going at it tonight. Obviously, you need some more consistency from Hunter Greene, needs to be healthy more, what have you. But right here, right now, I think this is 1 and 2 in the National League at GABP. Huge ball game. If you win last night, feels a little bit less huge, but kind of feels like a must-win here tonight against Pittsburgh, especially after the Mets come back against the Chicago Cubs and pull a victory. That was on national TV last night. Cubs had a big lead at Wrigley early. Mets come charging back and ultimately win that baseball game, and for now, retake that final spot in the wild card standings. So we'll be breaking down Cincinnati Reds talk. Obviously, lots of Reds conversation on off the bench, but here in this town with what's going on here, 5 games left, I think the Reds certainly deserve a lot of talk and a lot of conversation. We'll spend time on them here on today's show. Also, touched on, Rudy Johnson yesterday. That news that he passed away broke right before, we came on the air yesterday. So we're going to be talking about him just for a few minutes, kind of getting going on today's show. I had some time to sit back and think about, what he meant to me as a kid, right? I was born in 2000. He was here from 01, 07, that kind of range. That 05 team was incredible. That's the first team that I really remember watching. I was 5 years old, obviously, at the time. So we'll spend some time talking about Rudy. Bengals conversation, run game issues. Paul Dehner Jr. has a great piece up on The Athletic right now about just how bad the Cincinnati Bengals run game has been. We'll spend some time talking about that. Shedeur Sanders, obviously a backup quarterback up in Cleveland here at this point. A story kind of broke a couple of days ago about Shedeur Sanders as to why he slid so much in the NFL draft, and thought it was interesting. It hasn't really gotten a ton of media coverage here to this point. I think, the media really loves Dion, obviously his dad, and they haven't really talked about it as much as I think probably they should. We'll spend some time talking about that on today's show. And college football, we're going to do a bit of a look ahead, just kind of talk briefly about some of the games this weekend. The slate this weekend is absolutely ridiculous. One of the best that I've ever seen in my life, and that's not hyperbolic. I think that's just the reality of the situation. I've seen some tweets out there that are like, oh, really hope, you and the boys don't have to go to a wedding, this weekend during college football. And I've seen lots of tweets kind of joking about that. Well, I actually am going to a wedding. Now, don't get me wrong. It's one of my good buddies. I'm fired up to be going to the wedding. But when you see the college football slate, this weekend, and it's a Saturday wedding, you're just like, we'll have to record some of those games and catch up on them later in the weekend. But the college football slate's unbelievable. We'll look forward to that. And we'll have some more in-depth breakdowns on tomorrow's show. So tomorrow's show, it's going to be really fun. Got a lot on the docket for that. We'll spend some time in depth previewing a couple of the college football matchups. Georgia, Alabama, definitely one we're going to talk about, and then probably either Penn State, Oregon, and or Ohio State, Washington, 2 other big games. Ohio State, Washington at 3:30 at Husky Stadium. First real test for Julian Sayin on the road. That's big time. And Oregon and Penn State, Penn State was perceived as this top team in the country coming into this year. I've never really bought it, and they're going to face Oregon whiteout game, right? At Penn State. And, Penn State against Ohio State in those whiteout games certainly has struggled. Oregon, it's a long trip. I get it, cross country. But, I think Oregon's going to take care of business. Dan Lanning in that game. So we'll preview that tomorrow, most likely. Also, I saw some people in the comment section on yesterday's show. The Ryder Cup, obviously, is basically here. And I'm a big golf guy, and I would love to talk about golf here on this show. Obviously, we want to keep it to the point where we're talking about stuff that, people want to listen to, right? But if people want to listen to the golf stuff, we absolutely will do that. So we'll have some Ryder Cup conversation tomorrow. Also, best bets of the weekend tomorrow as we look to try to get back above 500 in regards to that. As I mentioned, no Friday show here for me. Still TBD. Trying to get Casey McAllister, not trying to force it on him, but if he wants to do it, Casey McAllister can host my show. We will have a word on that tomorrow and let you know if we will have a show on Friday or not. By no means does he have to. There's no pressure on Casey to do it, but I know a lot of people in the chat, a lot of people that tune in, love them some Casey McAllister. I obviously do as well, and if he wants to do it, he can, but there's no pressure as it relates to that. So we'll have best bets of the weekend there tomorrow, and lots of college football conversation, Ryder Cup talk there as well, and hopefully starting off tomorrow's show, recapping a Reds victory. And obviously we don't get to do that here today, but let's start with Rudy Johnson. talked about it briefly at the start of yesterday's show. Rudy Johnson passed away at the age of 45, and he really was a solid Bengals running back. And what exactly transpired, we don't have details on that at this point, and that's not really what we're going to spend our time talking about as it relates to Rudy Johnson. Obviously, it's a very, violent, physical game, especially for a running back. Lots of head hits, and you hear kind of some of the stuff going around, on social media and just in the media in general. As it relates to that, these players, it's a massive risk when they decide to play football. And, as you're seeing guys that have been away from the game for a while, that have retired, and they have some issues pop up, you can't help but wonder, what exactly went on with Rudy Johnson. But I want to spend some time talking about the player that he was, because he was an unbelievable football player for the Cincinnati Bengals. As I mentioned at the top of today's show, I was born in 2000 and obviously 25 years of age now. And, those first few years, obviously you don't know what's going on when you're 2, 3, 4 years old, right? But then you start to have some memories and understand what exactly was taking place when you get to about 5 years old. I feel like that's kind of the age for me. And Johnson, of course, was with the Bengals before that. I believe it was 01 to 07 for as far as his tenure here with Cincinnati, and he was kind of replacing Corey Dillon, right? Corey Dillon, phenomenal running back here, for the Cincinnati Bengals, played on some bad teams, obviously, and he had he's a Ring of Honor guy at Paycor Stadium. It took a little bit for him to get in there, and he kind of there was. He made a big deal about not being in it or whatever, and he got kind of his feelings hurt or whatever. Corey Dillon was an unbelievable running back for Cincinnati. Obviously, he then ends up going to New England and winning a Super Bowl with Tom Brady. But as a Bengals organization at the time, you were kind of sitting there saying, well, how exactly can you replace a guy like Corey Dillon? And I think Rudy Johnson proved that Corey Dillon was relatively expendable. Rudy Johnson was an absolute superstar, just kind of a bowling ball type of back. He would run you over, and he had such a great personality there as well. Obviously, now when you think about the Cincinnati Bengals, they've got their stars, right? Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, kind of that core trio of guys. Well, back at the time when Rudy was playing, it was kind of 4 guys that were really the stars, and that was Carson Palmer, Chad Johnson, T.J. Hushmanzada, and Rudy Johnson. This obviously was very early in Carson's career. Obviously those teams, a lot of, credit went to Carson for, chucking the ball around. Obviously Chad was unbelievable, T.J. as well, but Rudy Johnson could flat out run the rock. He did a tremendous job of running for the Cincinnati Bengals, and he put them in a position to be competitive. I mean, that 05 team was a really, really good football team, in large part due to Rudy Johnson, and also just the infectious personality that he had. It was always in a good mood, and you never know, with players in the NFL. There's a lot of, superstars in the NFL that are great guys, right? I think, we're very lucky as it relates to that, especially like the top quarterbacks in today's game. Like you look at Mahomes, Allen, Lamar, Herbert, say what you want about those guys, but they're all really good guys, seemingly portray that in the media, and they're always, open to conversation and talk and always have a smile on their face, what have you. That's not always the case for professional athletes. Rudy Johnson certainly was that guy as well. Any room in which he walked in, he just kind of lit it up with his smile. Always, took the time to talk to people, even after losses, right? It can be very difficult as a professional athlete. You lose a game. And obviously, Rudy Johnson was a part of a lot of losing as well. You lose a game, it can be hard to sit down with, a guy, a radio guy or, the guy that covers the team, and they're asking you hard questions, and Rudy always did a tremendous job of handling that, taking ownership when things went wrong, not, blaming other people. He just was a really, really solid dude and a really good running back for the Cincinnati Bengals. Mo Egger talked on his show the other day about just, he was producing Bengals line back in the day, and they would, Rudy would be on the show, and Rudy was just always such, a great guy, talking to Dave Lapham, and Andy Furman, I believe, was hosting the show at that point too, and that's just something that, a lot of people, they might not always remember because it was such a long time ago, but Rudy was such a good guy. And, it was pre-social media back then too. And those guys in Cincinnati, they were a big deal. Carson and Chad and TJ and Rudy, like those guys, it's different now with social media, and Burrow's like this international star. But in the city of Cincinnati, back in the early 2000s, those guys were a really, really big deal. And when you're in the spot like that, spotlight like that, it can be tough. Sometimes, you change a little bit. You get a little in your head, you're feeling like you're this really important person or whatever. That never really happened to Rudy, and he always had a good head on his shoulders and always was great in the community, did a tremendous job, being a good person for people to look up to there as well. So obviously, heart goes out to, his family, obviously way too young that we lost Rudy Johnson, but an incredible Bengal player. The Bengals released a statement yesterday, honoring him, and I hope they will do some more things as we continue over the course of the next couple weeks or months to honor Rudy Johnson, because he was an unbelievable running back for Cincinnati and an unbelievable football player for them as well. All right, so the Reds lose last night 4-2. It's tough, right? I mean, you go into the game and you're like, wow, we're here. We're in the spot. There's 6 games left, and the season ended today. The Cincinnati Reds would be in the playoffs. And it's kind of hard to believe, right? Because have they played good baseball at parts this year? Yes. But have they played losing baseball at parts this year? Yes, absolutely. You can make the argument that, they shouldn't even be in this spot, because if the New York Mets just hadn't absolutely been selling of recent, they wouldn't even find themselves when they're in a position here to even have a chance. That's all fine. But the reality is they went into last night and had a chance. There was the whole mantra of pack GABP, right? You had guys on social media posting it, tweeting it out. You had, everybody in the community seemingly getting fired up about it. Then you see kind of 6:40 first pitch, right? And it didn't really feel like anybody was there. Now, 6:40 is always a unique time. When I was a kid, I would have loved the 6:40 because the 7:10 start, I had a bedtime, right? So I would only see, limited baseball before I had to go to bed as a kid. And that was one of the things growing up. I've loved sports, obviously, my whole life. Had a bedtime. That's something that always frustrated me. Even looking back to this day, looking back now, back in the day, that would always it just kind of was like, ugh. Like, I remember just being so ticked off having to go to bed when, the Reds were on, or Sunday Night Football, or like college football national championship. Those games were all on really late. So just being an older person, not having to deal with that anymore certainly is a lot of fun. So back in the day, I would have loved a 6:40 start because I would have been able to see more baseball. But, at this point, I would love just a 7:10 start, right? That's what they always used to do. I'm sure there's reasons as to why, they're switching it to 6:40, whatever. But you can get more people in the ballpark. You can get more butts in seats if you start at 7:10, right? People have jobs, the traffic downtown, it gets congested. It's tough to get in there at 6:40. So I think it would have looked better at first pitch if it had been 7:10, obviously. And but credit to the fans. They did show up. It filled out. Was it sold out? No. But there was a lot of people there for that game cheering on the Cincinnati Redlegs. So, I think it was a big thing about, the crowd, what kind of crowd are we going to get? Hunter Greene, obviously, want more people to show up to the game. I get that. And, I thought for the most part, the city responded to the best of their ability, and they showed up. Unfortunately, the Reds could not deliver for them. Brady Singer has been tremendous. I was talking with a buddy last time in the trade for India. I was a big Jonathan India guy. Still am. Will continue to root for him. He was probably my favorite player on the team when he was here. But you flat out won that trade, right? I mean, you won that trade, and candidly, not close, right? Because Brady Singer has been great for you this year as somebody that's kind of been in the the middle of your rotation, right? Was he perfect last night? No. Did he put you in a spot where you could still win? Yes. I mean, he gave up 4 runs in the ball game last night, all in 1 inning. Obviously, that's kind of a difficult thing to swallow against a team like the Pittsburgh Pirates, right? Where you were kind of hoping that he could go out there and only give up a couple of runs in the game, right? I think obviously that would have been beneficial if he gets into the game and he only gives up a couple of runs in that game. But obviously, he goes in, he gives up 4 in 1 inning. You had the 2-run bomb from Oneil Cruz, and then you had a couple of, borderline no-name guys that come in clutch in that game and drive in some runs for the Pittsburgh Pirates. But he was able to do a nice job of settling in and still battled after that inning and gave you an opportunity where you could potentially have success in the game and score some runs in the ball game. Obviously, that did not end up happening, but Elly De La Cruz did show up in a really, really big way. And I want to give a lot of love to Elly De La Cruz because he's the only reason you even had a chance in this baseball game last night. Elly obviously has gotten a lot of flack for some of the things that have transpired this year. I think the expectations for Elly were probably unfair to him, but he probably definitely underperformed so far this year to this point. But he was borderline perfect in the game last night. I would even go as far as to say he was perfect in the game last night. He had the 2-run bomb, right? We obviously haven't seen Ellie put the ball over the fence in a while. He did have one a few games ago, but beyond that, we haven't seen him crank one like that in quite some time. And that ball was absolutely hammer. That was just kind of a OG Ellie De La Cruz type of home run, no doubter. And that really felt like it gave you an opportunity to have a chance to get back in the ball game, right? You were down 4-0 at that point. You have these people that show up. You're trying to get, fired up about potential postseason baseball here in Cincinnati. Brady Singer gives up the 4 spot, and you're like, oh, no, I don't know if we can score 4 runs. And then, boom, Ellie De La Cruz smacks one over the fence. Absolutely launched. So it feels like he had an opportunity in the game. He was 3 for 3 in the game besides that, right? He was finding ways to get on base. He spun around from the right-handed side. He was able to get on base there as well. Even late in the ball game, draws the walk. Yeah, they wanted nothing to do with him in that spot, and it was 4 consecutive balls. Still a really good AB from Ellie De La Cruz. And obviously the big knock on him has been the defense. Leads in Major League Baseball in errors. The 2 plays he made last night at that shortstop position were otherworldly type plays, to be completely honest with you. The back pick deep in the hole, fires a strike over to first base. Outstanding play. Charging in on a ball that's just kind of getting past the pitcher's mound, bare hand, sling it over to first base. Tremendous play. Ellie De La Cruz was fantastic in this ball game, and really the reason that you even had a thought about potentially sticking around in this game if you're the Cincinnati Reds. Now, besides that, who showed up in the game? Nobody, right? Spencer Steer, he's been in a spot. Obviously, he's carried this team offensively of late. I love Spencer Steer. I've been very vocal. Spencer Steer right now is my favorite player on this team. Loved watching Spencer Steer play ball. Had 2 walks in the game. Competitive at-bats. I thought he was the really one of the only guys that looked comfortable in there in that spot. 2 big walks, but obviously wasn't able to do anything offensively beyond that. You had some 2-out hits. TJ Friedel late. That was nice, but you weren't able to come in clutch with guys on base, and that kind of has been a theme, unfortunately, for you throughout the entirety of the year to this point. And now you're in a spot where you start to question Tito Francona. Right? When the team loses, you're in a spot where everybody's watching. You're in the race for the playoffs. Had a postseason spot yesterday. Obviously, today you do not have one. You got to critique the manager, right? With his lineup and his decision on Hunter Greene. I stood here on yesterday's show, and I was very clear. I thought it was the right move to keep Greene in place. Well, now you lose that game. And if you're in a spot where 162 is do or die, and you have Singer out on the mound in Milwaukee, and he loses that game, everybody's going to come after Tito. That's just the reality of the situation. I was fine with the decision. I supported the decision yesterday. I'm still going to support it, but do I feel as good about it today? No, obviously, absolutely not. Because, the only reason that I thought the Reds could potentially lose that game was just because, it's the Reds. Like, this just seems like a game they will lose. But on paper, who they had pitching, the momentum, the crowd, the positive energy, I thought they were going to win the game. But they revert back to old ways. The offense goes stagnant on them, and they ultimately lose the baseball game. So that's one thing people can pick apart about Tito Francona. The other thing will be the lineup, and that's going to get a lot of conversation here as, starting yesterday and through the course of these next 5 games, people are going to constantly be picking apart the lineup that Tito Francona puts out onto the field. Now, in Tito's defense, there isn't a clear-cut way to win, right? It's not like you got a bunch of stars that you can put at the top and the middle of your order and you can go out there and win baseball games, right? This isn't a Dave Roberts Dodgers lineup where it's like, oh, yeah, we know this guy's going to bat here and this guy, and we're just kind of, working out who's going to bat at the bottom. He doesn't really have that, all right? I mean, shoot, Ellie De La Cruz is the most talented player on this team, and you don't even know where to put him in the lineup because you had him up for the whole year. You could argue that Tito had him up there for too long. Now you have him down a little bit, but he's producing. Then you're like, well, do you have to bring him back up, or should we keep him here because he's been doing well here? So there's lots of decisions there to make. The big one for me is Gavin Lux hitting third. Right? I think the guy that hits third has to have an ability to have extra base hits and or put the ball over the fence. Gavin Lux is a really solid baseball player. Batting .266 this year. Great move this offseason by the Cincinnati Reds to bring in Gavin Lux. Championship type of player. Obviously was with the Dodgers before here. He's played in massive games. He's played in postseason games. He's been a part of a lot of winning. He's been in the big moments, and he's delivered in the big moments. I have no issues with Gavin Lux being in this lineup. He should be in this lineup. At the 3 spot? No. He can't be at the 3 spot in this lineup. And I was joking on off the bench. The ball he hit last night, yeah, he just barely got under it. It had, 100 mile per hour exit velo. He hit it well, just barely got under it. I hear you. All right. Could he have hit it over the fence? Sure. But, that ball was hit pretty hard for Gavin Lux and didn't get over the fence. Understand he got a little bit under it. But come on, that's your 3 hitter. And I get Tito feels comfortable, as Trace alluded to earlier. He feels comfortable with him in the lineup. Shoot, I feel comfortable with him in the lineup as well. I want him in the lineup. But unfortunately, you can't put him at that 3 spot, especially when he goes 0 in the game and you're making a change to put in a new guy later in the game and you bring Andujar in for him. Lux, fine being in the lineup. Got to get out of the 3 hole. Who do you put there? I don't have a great answer for you. There's not a ton of options, right? Andujar is a guy that I've been really high on. I think he's won you some games. I think Andujar, if you didn't make the move to get Andujar, you wouldn't be in this spot. Andujar has been very, very valuable. He's the best hitter in Major League Baseball as far as average against left-handed pitching. Is he as good against righties? Obviously not, right? Or he would be in the lineup on a consistent basis against righties. Came in the game against a righty yesterday, had some success, got a single, right? Obviously later bounced into a double play. And the Reds had opportunities in the game. Make no mistake about it. They had some guys on base in the later innings where it's like, all right, we just need a clutch hit, something off the wall. Obviously, something over the fence would be nice, and you get 3 consecutive double plays, obviously, to end the game, and that is an issue. Andujar's the guy I'd put in the lineup. I get it, Skenes, I get it's a righty, but Andujar's shown me that he's a winning baseball player and a guy that you can go to. It's just so hard coming off the bench, man. It's so hard. It's just, and Tito went to the bench. You could argue he went there a little bit too early, maybe. I don't know. It felt like he needed to do something as the offense obviously hadn't done anything besides the LE 2-run bomb in the second inning. He went to it. It didn't work out. Stevenson, that was not a very competitive at-bat where he goes in, strikes out immediately. But it'll be interesting to see how they adjust the lineup. Matt McLain. When the Reds drafted Matt McLain, I was hyped. I was ecstatic. I thought it was going to be awesome. His rookie year, it was awesome. And you have the injuries, right? Misses all of last year. This year, it hasn't been his year. And they're going to continue to be patient with him for a little bit. He's going to have an opportunity beyond this year to figure some things out. We've seen him hit before. We know he can do it. It's not one of these situations where it's like, oh, he's never hit in the big leagues. No, we've seen him hit before. Obviously, it was when he was younger. Obviously, the word wasn't out on Matt McLain, right? Not a full scouting report out on Matt McLain like there is this day. But he just lacks confidence up there. You see the look on his face. Doesn't look like he thinks he can get on base. Doesn't look like he thinks he can get a hit. Now, defensively, he's helped you out. Are you in a spot, if you're Tito Francona, where you can risk putting Gavin Lux back out at second base and putting McLain on the bench? I don't know. Because Gavin Lux in the field this year has not been good. In fact, it's been an issue when Gavin Lux has been out on the field. I remember one game that I was at against Milwaukee. Big lead for the Cincinnati Reds. The lead that they blew and obviously lost the game. Gavin Lux error. Just a simple play at second base. Couldn't make it. And in a playoff type of game, do you want a guy like Gavin Lux out there at second base? It's a question that needs to be answered. We'll see. And then you look at third base. Ke'Bryan Hayes obviously has not been able to get a hit since I don't know when. It's been quite some time. He's got the back. Does he look fully healthy? Maybe not. I would still put him in the lineup. I would still put him in the lineup because I believe that what he can do for you at third base, even if he's beat up, that's the reason you traded for him, right? You said, oh, he's going to have an opportunity to save us some runs. Well, if he's sitting on the bench, he's not going to have an opportunity to save you some runs. I think you can afford to still put him down there in that 9 spot at third base because he's going to continue to make great plays. Made a great play last night there as well, getting the lead runner at second base. I would continue to put Ke'Bryan Hayes in the lineup. But if you have a lineup where it's like, okay, you got Ke'Bryan in there, he's not getting a hit, and you have Matt McLain, he's not getting a hit, that's a problem. That's obviously a serious, serious issue. I would open the idea of potentially putting Gavin Lux back at second base. I know it sounds crazy, but I would open that idea because, it's just obvious from an eyeball test perspective. It doesn't seem like Matt McClain even believes there's a possibility he can get a hit when he's up there at the dish. Spencer Steer, we talked about him. He's going to be continue to have quality at-bats and help this team. Reds are going to need him. Reds are going to need him in the rest of this series, and they're certainly going to need him in Milwaukee as well. So we'll see how Tito juggles the lineup. Noelvi Marte is in a spot where, his performance to this year in the season, I think, has earned him a spot at the top of the lineup. Obviously, he has cooled down significantly, but I still think you'll see him up there. Question's tough. Do you try to ride a hot hand situation? Well, who's a hot hand? You don't really have any besides Steer, and I guess you could say Ellie after last night. So we'll see. Very interested to see the lineup from Tito today. And obviously that's something people are going to continue to dissect and, make opinions on and critique, right? Especially when you lose ball games. That's just the nature of being in this spot of the season. Now let's talk before we transition. I do want to talk about the pitching matchup here in this game. I get Paul Skenes has given up a lot of runs this year, or not a lot of runs, has lost his fair share of games this year. I understand that. I also understand that when the Reds faced him last time, they were able to hit him around a little bit. I believe they had 7 knocks off of him the last time they squared off. Unable to get the big hit, and obviously that was an issue for them. It's my opinion that Paul Skenes is the best pitcher in the game. Paul Skenes is unbelievable. The fastball is ridiculous. The slider is ridiculous. The physical traits are crazy. But to me, and I think this is something that Trace wasn't fully acknowledging on off the bench, is that Paul Skenes is a relentless competitor. He is a psycho competitor. There are elements to Paul Skenes that I see in Joe Burrow. That kind of just crazy psycho competitor, I'm here to eat your soul type of stuff from Paul Skenes. And this is a big moment for Paul Skenes. His record is sitting there at 68-89, talking about the Pittsburgh Pirates. They've stunk since he's been up. Obviously, they stunk last year. They're stinking again this year. He's voiced his frustration about them stinking. Obviously, fired their manager early this year, right? This is as big a spot as it really gets. Since, obviously when he's pitching in L.A. or whatever, that feels like a big spot, obviously, for him. All-Star game, sure, feels like a big spot. But an opportunity against a division rival on the road to knock them or help knock them out of the playoffs, Paul Skenes is going to be locked in tonight. And that's a problem for the Cincinnati Reds. It's a serious problem. Hunter Greene's got to be on his A game. Now, the speech that Trace gave at the end of Off the Bench, it was awesome. It fired me up. Do I fully agree that the Reds are going to find a way to get it done? I hope so, obviously. I really, really hope so. Am I going to, right before first pitch be like, we're going to win this game? Probably. But Paul Skenes is an issue. He is a serious, serious problem. And the Reds are going to see close to his best tonight. Now, another thing that we brought up, obviously, is how long is Paul Skenes going to be out there? How many pitches is he going to throw? How many innings is he going to go? Obviously, they're trying to, protect him here at this stage of the year. I'm sure there is a plan in place for Skenes. Do we know what that is at this point? No. But I can promise you one thing. Skenes wants to pitch this like it's a normal game. He wants to pitch it probably as if Pittsburgh is competing for a playoff spot. Psycho competitor, Paul Skenes. And he hasn't had a ton of opportunities playing with this organization to be in these kinds of moments. On the road, division rival, against another pitcher that some people now are saying is the second best pitcher in the National League. Paul Skenes is going to want to go in this game, and he's going to want to go for a long time, and he's going to want to go to battle with Hunter Greene, and Hunter Greene better be ready for it. All right? My gut says if Pittsburgh can get to that 4 spot again, they had 4 runs in the game last night. If they can get to that 4 spot again, I don't know if I like the Reds winning this game. 0, 1, 2, or 3. Give me the Red Legs. Reds give up 4. Pittsburgh hangs 4 on them. I don't know if the Reds have enough firepower offensively to get 5 in a game like this against Skenes, regardless of how long he goes. I think Hunter Greene's going to need to be spectacular. And something we also pointed out on Off the Bench is if Hunter Greene goes out there and throws 7 innings and gives up 3 runs, people are going to say, oh, he absolutely stunk. And there's a good chance that that isn't the reality of the situation. But if they lose and he gives up 3 runs, people are going to be banging on Hunter Greene. Hunter Greene also lives for these moments. Is he as psycho of a competitor as Paul Skenes? I have my questions on whether or not that is true. But I do know, and he made it clear, that he likes being an ace, and he wants to be an ace. And when he's out there and he's healthy and he's feeling good, he's a problem. And he competes. And you saw that the last time he was out there against the Cubs. He's going to need to be special in this game. And he's got to be careful, right? Because he can't just rely on that fastball the whole time and try to blow these guys away. Yeah, that'll work for large portions of the game, but there are some guys, Oneil Cruz, certainly one of them, that if you miss with a fastball, you're going to lose the baseball because it's going over the fence. And in a game where I don't believe Cincinnati's going to be able to score a ton of runs, I think runs are going to be, something that, it's going to be a low-scoring game, right? Hunter Greene's got to be excellent in this game for Cincinnati. This is the moment he lives for. This is the biggest start of his career. Obviously, maybe you could say, his debut, but other than that, this is the biggest start of his career. Cincinnati's in a spot where they need to win this game. I still believe the Cubs will figure it out. I was watching parts of that game last night. I just couldn't believe, that the Cubs lost another baseball game. They are just spiraling downward. And it was kind of a choke job, to be completely honest with you. That's a Mets team, by the way, that, they might have some names on that roster. That's not a good team. That's not a good baseball team at all. Do I think the Reds are a great baseball team? No, I think the Reds are better than the Mets. Mets aren't good. And the Cubs, obviously, are struggling. The Reds are going to need the Cubs here at some point now, right? No longer control their own destiny. They're going to need the Cubs a little bit. And we'll see what the Marlins can do against the Mets down the line in a couple of days. But it's a big game, obviously, for Hunter Greene. And obviously we'll have a close eye on the Mets game as well. Big win for the D-backs last night. Reds have tiebreakers over both those teams. If you find a way to, obviously we talked about 4-2 over the next 6, including last night. So can you go 4-1 over the next 5? I don't know. Will 3-2 over the next 5 be enough to get you in? With the tiebreakers, you feel decent. But we'll see. Ultimately, it's a massive game for Hunter Greene, and he needs to respond, and he needs to answer the bell for the Cincinnati Reds in this game. All right. As always, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. If you're watching on YouTube, really helps us out. Obviously, we're approaching 19,000 subscribers here at Chatterbox. If you're subscribing to the channel, you're not just subscribing to me, but you're also getting a ton of Cincinnati Reds coverage. We got Off the Bench, obviously, before my show, 10 to 11. Trace Fowler has been back this week. You'll see Reed Mouse again soon there. Casey McAllister will be back producing on Friday as I am out. And also plenty of Reds coverage, right? Nick Kirby, Trace Fowler, and others. They got you covered with the pregame show. Craig Sandlin obviously does a tremendous job with the Reds and Bengals as well. Don't want to miss out any of that coverage. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. And also, podcasts of our show will be up shortly after we wrap here at about noon. The podcast will go up wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, iHeart, Spotify. It'll be there. If you ever can't, obviously, tap into the show as it's happening. Obviously, it's 11 to noon on the weekday. People have jobs. I totally get that. That's fine. But the podcast is available to you at any time. Driving home from work or driving to work the following day really helps us out as we try to grow the podcast there as well. And also, you'll see some more clips go out on social media. People were kind of banging me for the Bengals one that went out yesterday. That's as critical as I've ever been of Zach Taylor. And I went after Zach Taylor on yesterday's show. I did. And there were still people that were saying that I was giving Zach Taylor a pass. I don't know if they didn't watch it or whatever the case may be, but Zach Taylor's got to be better. When your team goes on the road like that and gets whooped like that and quits on the team late in the game, it's a direct reflection of the head coach. There's no two ways around that. Now, I think some people are like, well, I would have quit too if it was 40 whatever to 3, and maybe that's fine. But, so that's something that Taylor's always been able to hang his hat on, is that his team doesn't quit. Obviously, they quit in the game on Sunday. So help us out. Do all those things. Subscribe, like the stream, follow us on social media, at StoneShields_ on Twitter, and the show at The Stone Shields on Twitter as well, as we begin to post more clips there on our Twitter page. Kind of a busy week for us here this week, but you'll see next week, kind of the second half of next week, more clips will be going up on the YouTube side. But let's talk about the Cincinnati Bengals run game for a little bit, because the run game has been awful. One of the worst in the history of the National Football League, and I don't think that's hyperbolic either, to say the least. But Cincinnati, they haven't been able to pass block, obviously, but they haven't been able to run block either with that offensive line. And Chase Brown, you got national pundits out there acting like Chase Brown just stinks, but that's not the reality. It looks like he stinks, but the offensive line has been horrible for the Cincinnati Bengals to this point. Paul Dehner Jr. does a tremendous job covering the Cincinnati Bengals, writing for The Athletic. He has a piece out as it relates to their run game, and he has a couple of stats that he put out. The Bengals rank last in the NFL with 2.4 yards per carry. The Steelers, by the way, are second to last at 2.8, and the league average is 4.3. Obviously, that is not good. 2.4 yards per carry. It does not get any worse than that if you're the Cincinnati Bengals. On first and second downs, the Bengals rank last in yards per carry and success percentage without a single explosive run. That means 12-plus yards in 50 attempts. And that was always something that, you felt like you had with Chase Brown, right? Obviously, Joe Mixon, I think he had a great career here. I love what Joe Mixon was able to do on the football field. The tail end of his career here in Cincinnati, there was no threat of him getting a run for over 10 yards. That changed last year with Chase Brown. It felt like he had an ability to perhaps break one. And unfortunately, he has been yet to do that this year. Don't think that is his fault by any stretch of the imagination, as there are no run lanes for him along that offensive line. But no explosive runs this year in 50 attempts obviously is a serious issue. More from Dehner. In 2022, the Bengals shifted away from a zone attack into a downhill gap scheme and saw a significant uptick in efficiency. As you remember, back in 2022, they were 32nd, obviously last in the NFL through 4 weeks. If you remember that, a couple of years ago, year after the Super Bowl team, when they struggled at the beginning of that year and then obviously ended up still getting to the AFC Championship. And then by season's end, they were 8th. So that was obviously significant improvement. And then also in 2023, something that they were able to do a good job of is they added kind of a screen game. And that was what really allowed them to have some success with Jake Browning, as you saw some of that screen game worked in more. They tried to do that, by the way, a little bit against Minnesota. You saw it early, just trying to get it in Jamar's hands. That's a great defense. I think they'll have some success with that as the year progresses, but clearly no success with that against the Minnesota Vikings. So that shift in philosophy is interesting. From the zone attack to the downhill gap scheme, and I'm not going to sit here and try to explain that, and you don't want to hear a guy like me sit here and try to explain it, but the bottom line is this. There are some things that they can do schematically to change what they're doing right now that could potentially give them an opportunity, right? The coaches, and we talked about this on yesterday's show, are going to have to showcase their brilliance or show if they have brilliance, right? Because you're not going to just get a new offensive line. We talked about it this offseason. You had the offseason to rework it. You reworked it to the best of your ability, which I question whether or not it was the best of your ability, but regardless, you made some changes. This is your offensive line. Could you make a couple of small changes? Oh, yeah, we'll put in Jalen Rivers instead of Reisner. Okay, right? That's like one thing you can do. Oh, well, in a couple of weeks, if Lucas Patrick's healthy, we'll put him back in. Okay. Right, but you're not going to get these wholesale changes along the offensive line. The only hope here is scheme differences, or that you can block a little bit better. But I don't know. It's not like Ted Karras and those guys up front are trying to let get blown up. Right, I'm sure they're doing their best. Could they be more physical? It certainly seems like they could, just from the eye test looking at it, where they're just getting blasted on every play. You would think they could be a little bit more aggressive and physical and nasty up there. We'll see if they can do it, but it's going to be on the coaching staff to scheme some stuff up and find ways to put their players in better situations and do a better job at taking advantage of what the defense is doing. And they haven't done a good job of that at all. And then one more from Dehner here. In 2000, Corey Dillon carried 41 times for 82 yards in the first 3 games of the year, 3 blowout defeats where the Bengals scored 7 total points, and then he finished the season with over 1,400 yards rushing, 4.6 per carry, and had 278 yards on the ground in a Week 8 win against the Denver Broncos. So, those last two there from Dana are a sense that things can get turned around is basically his point, right? It's been as bad as could possibly be here through 3 games for the Cincinnati Bengals. They've been in a spot before. Again, in 2022, if you remember, that start to the season was awful, right? They weren't doing a ton offensively. Obviously couldn't run the ball, but then they got it turned around. And before you knew it, they were kind of back into gear, winning all types of football games and back in the AFC Championship, play away from being in the Super Bowl. Now, with Corey Dillon, obviously, he had Willie Anderson. Willie Anderson should be a Hall of Famer. He's somehow not. That's a conversation for a different day. But there's no Willie Anderson out on the football field for Cincinnati, obviously. It's Orlando Brown Jr., and my goodness, just real quick one more time on Orlando Brown Jr. I came into this year feeling good about the bookend tackles and him and Mims. And obviously, what I was concerned about was the depth behind him. I was like, yeah, he'll be fine, but he's probably going to get banged up and miss a couple of games because, that seemingly has happened. Orlando Brown Jr. has not been fine. Orlando Brown Jr. has been awful. Orlando Brown Jr. is one of the reasons why you have looked so bad on offense. Is one of the main reasons why. In fact, if I had to blame one guy, one player on offense, it would probably be him. He's supposed to be a solid left tackle. You got him, you paid him a lot of money, and he's played good football for you. He played great before he got hurt last year. But my goodness, he has been a liability, to say the least, for the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, on the other side, obviously, you have Amarius Mims, who, out of all the offensive linemen, has clearly been the best. Has he been good? You could say probably not, right? But he's certainly been the best out of all the starters. But you have to find ways to shift and adapt in the run game and find a way to put your team in a better position. You don't have Joe Burrow, as we've talked about. I mean, that's going to, we're just going to end up belaboring that point. That's just kind of where we're at here. You don't have Joe Burrow, right? You're going to have to run the football. You're going to have to figure some stuff out. You're going to have to coach really well and scheme really well to try to help Jake Browning. And I think there was this narrative by some people. And, I love taking the optimistic side. I really do. And that's something that I'll continue to probably do. I mean, if you're just going to be a fan and you're just going to be down in the dumps all the time, pessimistic, say, oh, yeah, we suck, we're never going to have a chance, it's the same old, same old. Well, that's not a way to live life, right? What's the point of being a fan? When you're sitting there watching sports, for the most part, most people have, real jobs that are serious jobs that are very, very stressful, what have you. When you sit down and you watch sports, it's a distraction. If you're using that distraction just to be negative, what are you doing? That's kind of my mindset. You might as well be positive about it. And we were gonna be positive about Jake Browning, coming in. I mean, obviously it was sad, depressing, frustrating, whatever with Joe Burrow, but you have to move on. Unfortunately, they're not going to cancel the season. They're still going to line up and play. And if you're still a fan, you're still going to tap in. You're not going to be as excited as you were. You're not going to be as optimistic as you were, but you're still probably going to tap in if you're a Cincinnati Bengals fan. But one thing people were struggling with was that, we got Jake Browning. We still got T. Higgins and Jamar Chase and, Trey Henderson on defense. We still got some guys. And, Jake Browning he's a top-of-the-line backup. He's one of the best. Folks, we went from the best quarterback in the National Football League. You don't agree with me? Fine. We went from a top 3 quarterback in the National Football League. If you don't think he's the best, you have to admit he's at least top 3. That's just the cold, hard facts. It's the reality of the situation. From a top 3 quarterback to a backup, not to a low-end starter, not to a middle-of-the-road starter, to a backup quarterback. There was no way that it was going to look even remotely similar to when Joe Burrow's out there. Even if Jake Browning was balling, and hopefully he gets back to what he was doing in 2023, gives you an opportunity to win some games. You went from Joe Burrow to a backup. And I'm not trying to sit here and disrespect Jake Browning. A solid backup in the National Football League. Makes a lot of money. He's going to continue to be a backup in the National Football League. He's not a starter. It's not like, we went from Joe Burrow to a low-end starter. No, we went from Joe Burrow to a backup. That's a problem. You have to be able to run the football with a backup. You got to be able to outcoach the other team or at least hang in there in a chess match against another opponent. If you go out there with a backup quarterback and have no run game and get completely outcoached and lack effort and physicality and attention to detail and turn the ball over 5 times, that's what you're going to get. So a lot needs to be cleaned up for Cincinnati. They're not going to be in a spot as a team where they can go out there and maybe take a couple of plays off in the first quarter, have a couple of mental mistakes, maybe lose the turnover battle, and here comes Joe Burrow in the fourth quarter, and he'll put together 2 incredible drives, and you'll edge out a victory. It's not going to happen. He's not here to do that, unfortunately. You're going to have to be more buttoned up as a team. You're going to have to coach better. You're going to have to be more prepared, more disciplined, all right? More unselfish as a team. Guys are going to have to be sacrificing, putting their bodies on the line, competing each and every play, not taking plays off. All those things have to be done now that you don't have Joe Burrow as your quarterback for the foreseeable future. We'll see if this team is capable of making those adjustments. We'll see if this coaching staff is capable of making those adjustments as well. Shedeur Sanders, I want to talk about this. Look, I think the best course of action here is some people, that do this, that talk or whatever, they get on there and then they say something and then they'll totally switch their narrative and switch their tune and act like they actually said something else. I obviously wasn't doing this show come the NFL draft, but I'll just be transparent with all of you out there. I thought Shedeur Sanders was a first-round guy, and I thought Shedeur Sanders should have been considered for Cleveland at the number 2 overall selection. Truth be told, I thought that was the case. Based on, what he had been able to do in college, some of the traits that he had, where Cleveland was at as an organization. Funnily enough, Cleveland obviously still gets him, but in the 5th round. But I thought he was a first-round guy. I would have taken him in the 1st round. And clearly he slid, and clearly I was completely wrong about that. And now it looks like, maybe he'll get an opportunity somewhere, but he's probably going to be a backup. But story came out, and it was interesting as to why he slid. Right, because he's clearly not a 5th-round guy. What he put on tape at Colorado, clearly not a 5th-round guy. You want to say, he wasn't a 1st-round guy? Fine. 3rd round at the worst, Shedeur Sanders, not a 5th-round guy. And you begin to question, why was he sliding? And there were some people that had the narrative of, well, you never want a superstar to be your backup quarterback, right? Because then all eyes are on your backup. If your starter throws 1 interception, people are going to bring up the backup. And, after the game, he's not playing, but the media still goes to him, and they're asking him questions. I get it. Having a superstar backup quarterback is an issue. You saw it with Tim Tebow. Now, Shedeur not nearly on his kind of level as far as fame goes, but, there was a reason why Tim Tebow's career as a quarterback probably ended a little prematurely. It's because nobody really wanted him to be on the team as a backup because the Tebow mania that surrounded him was just too much. Same with Johnny Manziel to some degree. Now, he, self-imploded, right, with some of the decisions that he made. And I love Johnny Football as a college quarterback, and, I got love for Johnny Football. But, what he did during his time in Cleveland, he didn't handle himself like a professional, right? And he kind of drove his career into the ground, right? But nobody else, thought about even possibly giving him a chance because you don't want that as your backup quarterback. So I understand, why teams were like, well, we don't view him as, a guy that can be our starter. We don't want to take him. That was a narrative that was out there. Obviously, his dad is another, reason why. Dion, obviously the head coach of Colorado, but he's in a ton of commercials. He's always talking. Wherever he's at, there's a camera pointing at him, right? And, Dion really has embraced kind of the YouTube world, the social media world. He is out there at all times. So that's another potential reason. But a story came out that the Ravens and the Philadelphia Eagles had interest in drafting Shedeur Sanders, and Sanders and his team said, we're good. I don't understand that whatsoever. And the reason that he said he was good is because he didn't think that there was a direct road to him being the starter with either one of those organizations, which is a true statement. Obviously, Jalen Hurts is the guy. Lamar Jackson is the guy. And barring injury, they're going to continue to be the guy for the next decade plus for their respective teams. And then I get that. But you have to look at some of the success stories in the NFL. Does everybody come in and they're drafted as the guy and they're the guy? No. In fact, it rarely happens. Peyton Manning is one of the rare examples, and think about how bad Peyton Manning was early in his career with all the interceptions and turnovers. You look at what Green Bay does. Nobody's handled quarterback better than Green Bay, right? Do they bring guys in and start right away? No. What did Aaron Rodgers do? Sat for several years behind Brett Favre. Favre's done. They turn it over to Rodgers. Rodgers is ready. Incredible football team for as long as he's at the helm. Same after Rodgers. Could he have gone a couple of more years with Green Bay? Sure. They had Love, sat 3 years behind him. All right, now time for Jordan Love, and he's sensational there as well and one of the best teams in the National Football League. Even Patrick Mahomes, he didn't come in to immediately be the starter. He sat behind Alex Smith, learned a lot from Alex Smith, right? When Mahomes talks about it, he talks about how that was probably the most impactful stage of his career, and he wouldn't be where he's at without Alex Smith. Tom Brady was even behind Bledsoe for a year in New England. Wasn't brought in. Obviously, he's the late-round pick. Wasn't brought in to be the starter. There's stories like that all over the National Football League. Rarely do you have a guy that comes in and he's this top pick, and then he's the starter, and then he's the guy, and he's really good throughout his career. It doesn't really happen like that a ton. Sure, it happens some, but it doesn't happen a ton like that in the NFL. So Shedeur Sanders completely handled this situation totally wrong. And also, to pass on the Philadelphia Eagles and the Baltimore Ravens, I can make the argument that they're the two most stable organizations in the National Football League. Two of the best. Great ownership, right? They don't meddle, right? To a certain degree. Maybe they do a little bit, but they're not overly, meddling. They're not too impulsive, right? You get these billionaire owners across the NFL, and then a couple of things go wrong. They listen to the fans. They listen to sports talk, and then they make some rash decision. It's not what you have in Philadelphia and Baltimore. You have stability, right? Great GMs, right? Howie Roseman in Philadelphia, Eric DaCosta in Baltimore, guys that have had those positions for a long time. Solid head coaches. Harbaugh, has he had postseasons, troubles? Maybe, sure. He's got a Super Bowl, right? He's going to continue to be the guy in Baltimore. Sirianni, I had my questions with him. I'm not a Sirianni guy, but clearly he knows what he's doing, and it works. Stable organizations. And Shedeur said, I'm good. I want to go to Cleveland because I could have a quicker opportunity to potentially be the guy. Well, no one's been able to be the guy in Cleveland. It's all about fit in the National Football League, right? You're seeing it, with Joe Burrow. Unfortunately, if Joe Burrow was drafted to a different organization, let's just say Minnesota, with more stability, better ownership, good GM, he probably would have a ring by now. That's just kind of the reality of the situation. It's all about fit. Trying to think of another example here. Bryce Young going to Carolina. Well, it didn't matter who went to Carolina. You could put Herbert in Carolina. You could put Burrow in Carolina. They're all going to struggle. It's Carolina. It's a disaster. It's a tire fire. It's a complete mess. It's all about fit. You put J.J. McCarthy, he might have a chance in Minnesota. For the record, I don't think he's going to be good at all. But he's got a chance because he's got a great head coach and a stable organization and a good GM and pieces around. If you put J.J. McCarthy in Carolina is a place where nobody's going to succeed. But even in a place like Atlanta for McCarthy, not going to work, right? It's all about fit in the National Football League. The coach that you're with, the coordinators that you're with, the ownership group of the team, the pieces that are around you. It's all about fit. And Shedeur had an opportunity to go to a place like Baltimore, Philadelphia, stable, learn from a really, really good NFL quarterback. Lamar's top 4 guy. I view Jalen Hurts as top 10 guy. Could have gotten a lot better, but he said, no, I'm good. I want a path to be a starter. And I think he's going to pay the price for it. Because even if he has an opportunity to become the guy in Cleveland, probably not going to work out because it's Cleveland. And that's just kind of the reality of the situation. But people not really talking about that in the media, which I didn't completely understand because people like to protect, Dion a little bit in the media. That's fine. But that's a big story. That's why he slipped in the draft, because he was saying no to teams like Baltimore and Philadelphia who had interest in taking him as a backup. He had no interest in doing that. He ends up in Cleveland, and we'll see how his career goes from here. Got a couple of more minutes left on the show. Big college football weekend this weekend. Unbelievable slate. We'll have a couple of previews more in-depth tomorrow, but it all starts on Friday. Florida State, Virginia. Great game. Florida State is a team that people view as kind of a top 10 team now. They come in against Alabama at home, explode on the scene, dominate that football game in all facets. And, they haven't played anybody since, but they've looked solid in those games as well. 6.5-point favorites are the Seminoles on the road against Virginia. Also TCU, Arizona State. That is a potential playoff eliminator, right? Arizona State already has a loss. They can't afford to lose that game. They're 2.5-point favorites at home. Hoover, the quarterback of TCU, I like him a lot. Sonny Dykes, remember, this is a guy that's been in the national championship game a couple of years ago. Obviously, they've been down, but I think TCU probably back up. Those are just 2 Friday games. Also, the Saturday slate is unbelievable. USC, Illinois, noon on Fox, right? The Trojans, people have kind of viewed Lincoln Riley's tenure in SC as kind of a borderline disaster at this point. This is probably the best team top to bottom that he's had. USC teams in the past have been really soft, small, undersized, in the trenches, kind of get pushed around, bullied. I don't see this Trojan team being like that this year. Am I going to say they're physical enough to compete with Ohio State, Michigan, and Oregon in the Big Ten? I'm not going to go that far yet, but they're certainly a step above where they've been in the past. Illinois, a team that just got blown out on the road as a top 10 team, right? Illinois ranked number 9. Going into last week, they go to Indiana. Bloomington get the doors blown off them, 63-10, I believe was the final of that game. Unbelievable game at noon, USC, Illinois. Notre Dame, Arkansas, great game. Notre Dame obviously has to run the table. Really like C.J. Carr, their quarterback. Jeremiah Love, I think, is the best player in college football, not named Jeremiah Smith or Caleb Downs, their running back. He's really, really good, but that defense has some serious issues for the Fighting Irish. Obviously, Al Golden leaving, coming over to Cincinnati as the Bengals defensive coordinator. That defense for Notre Dame has been putrid, and you can make the argument Sam Pittman, head coach Arkansas, borderline coaching for his job here at this point. They're 3.5 point dogs at home to the Fighting Irish. That's another noon game as well. And then you get later in the day, and you just get banger after banger after banger. Ohio State, Washington, 3:30. Ohio State, 8.5 point favorites in the game. Washington, Jed Fish, they got a really good coach. Husky Stadium, that is a really good home field advantage that I don't think gets talked about enough. Kind of the first, opportunity in the Big Ten for Washington to really have, a big game against Ohio State at home. Washington unranked at this point. You can make the argument they should be ranked. They just blew the doors off of their rival. Washington State, first time Julian Sayin has to go on the road, a loud environment, young quarterback. For the record, I think he'll be just fine. I think he'll perform just fine, but that is a great college football game, Ohio State and Washington. LSU Ole Miss, what an incredible game that is, also at 3:30 ABC. LSU was my national championship pick going into the year. Clearly, offensively, they have not performed to that type of level. Defensively, believe it or not, they've turned around and been one of the best defenses in the country. Got a lot of help in the transfer portal, brought in a new defensive coordinator in the process. I thought Garrett Nussmeier was the best quarterback in college football coming into the year. He's been fine, but he hasn't been that by any stretch of the imagination. Their first real tests on the road against Ole Miss because, they played Clemson, obviously, in week 1. Clemson now is just not good, as Clemson has 3 losses now in the season. So this kind of feels like, in the moment, obviously, it was a big test for LSU going on the road. But now, in hindsight, Clemson's not a very good football team. Now they got to go to Vaught-Hemingway Stadium in Oxford, Mississippi, and take on LSU in kind of a storyline that people on social media are talking about, as Lane Kiffin's daughter is dating the middle linebacker of LSU. So there's kind of another storyline there for you. And Kiffin, of course, always all over Twitter, being a jokester, and he said take the over in the game. So we'll see. Ole Miss, a 1.5 favorite in that game against LSU. Unbelievable football game there. And then you get a little bit later in the day, and there's tons of great games. I'm really just kind of sticking to the ranked matchups here. But then Oregon, Penn State, 7:30 NBC, great game. Penn State, what are you made of? Right? You haven't been tested at all this year. You've been viewed as this top team. Drew Aller's been viewed as this definite, round 1 type of quarterback that obviously came back for another year of college ball. I've never been really impressed with Drew Aller and what he can do. Obviously, has a big arm. He's got the traits, but I think he's underperformed. I think his head coach certainly has as well. Penn State's favored in that game. It's a whiteout game, raucous environment. Ohio State's obviously had no trouble in those types of games at Happy Valley. First time we're really kind of getting this, right? Oregon having to go to Happy Valley at night. That's great, right? Conference realignment, transfer portal, NIL, say what you want about them, but the fact that we're getting this type of game is unbelievable. And, I think Oregon takes care of business, wins that game. I think they're way better coached. I think they're more physical up front. And candidly, I think they have the better quarterback. As crazy as that might sound, I think Dante Moore's playing at a higher level than Drew Aller. And then Alabama and Georgia. Banger of a game in between the hedges in Athens. We'll preview that game tomorrow here on today's show, or on tomorrow's show. Alabama, not much room for error right after that Florida State game. They've done a nice job battling back. Obviously didn't play anybody that week 2 game. I don't even remember who the team was, but then played Wisconsin and played really, really well. Ty Simpson. Kirby Smart said it earlier this week. He's the hottest quarterback in the country. We'll see if he can do that against Kirby's defense. Georgia, 5 in the country. They're a lot better than they were last year. Kirby Smart, as long as he's there, he's always going to be an issue. Alabama, Georgia always delivers. Obviously, Alabama owns that matchup against Georgia. Georgia does have the one national title over Alabama, but Alabama has owned that matchup even without Nick Saban, as the Tide obviously took care of business at home last year. Now they got to go on the road. Unbelievable college football game. And those are just a few, right, that I mentioned. Loaded slate all day. We'll have a couple of previews coming your guys' way tomorrow. Really looking forward to that. Also, tomorrow's show, do best bets of the weekend because no show on Friday, or I won't be hosting the show on Friday. And we'll talk Ryder Cup as well. A little golf conversation. We'll see how that goes. But certainly appreciate everybody for tuning in throughout the entirety of today's program here today. And a big one for the Cincinnati Redlegs tonight. Certainly going to be locked into that game, and hopefully Hunter Greene can outperform Paul Skenes and put the Reds back in a position where they could potentially make the postseason. But that'll do it for today's show. Appreciate everyone that tuned in. Make sure to like the stream and hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. And we'll talk to you right back here tomorrow on the Stone Shield Show.